What's up, guys? Hockey TikTok is back, and today we are doing our final predictions for the upcoming 2024-2025 NHL season. So the way that it's going to work is I'm going to list out each division, and then from there I'm going to place each team in their respective ranking, how I think that they're going to finish at the end of the season. So I'll just kind of go row by row, rank by rank, and I'm going to give you guys my predictions. These predictions are just kind of gut feelings. I didn't put a lot of analysis or too much thought into this. This is just a raw, sort of guess prediction is how I went with these. So without further ado, I am starting with the Atlantic Division. So in 8th place, I have the Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres have the longest playoff drought in the history of the NHL, and they haven't made the playoffs in almost 20 years. So I had them in the playoffs a couple of years ago when I did another similar style of prediction videos where I was kind of guessing where everybody's going to finish. And they built off of that season. It looked like they finally might turn the corner last year, and then they missed again. So at this point, guys, I've given up all faith, all hope, all, any sort of, credence that I had in the Buffalo Sabres. I think that they're done for, guys. They're going to have to start over again, and it's going to be a really long time before we ever see Buffalo back in the playoffs, because I don't know what the heck they're doing. So Buffalo Sabres last in the Atlantic Division. Next, number 7th, we have the Montreal Canadiens. Montreal has a lot of intriguing young players, guys coming up in the system, young, really strong guys that, it seems like they're taking a good step forward, yet they don't really seem to be able to be at the level of the other competition in this division so far. And at the beginning of this year, they've already been hit with some injuries. Patrick Laine was a very intriguing player that they acquired over the offseason, because he has a ton of upside. He's been a 40-goal scorer before. When he was only in his first year playing with Winnipeg, some people even thought he might have been a better goal scorer than Austin Matthews. So now that Montreal acquired him, it looked like they had a chance to rehab a player that, maybe lost his way in some sort of way. But unfortunately, he injured himself in the preseason already, and he's going to be out for at least a few months, I've heard. So that sort of negative slide right at the beginning of the year, combined with, I think, another one of their really intriguing young defensemen was injured as well, combined with the lack of experience that they have had making the playoffs so far, leads me to this decision to put Montreal in my prediction to finish 7th in the Atlantic Division. So we've got Buffalo 8, Montreal 7. I have Ottawa slated to finish 6th in this division. So again, Ottawa very close to Montreal. They've also been building the last few years, and I remember, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago now. It was so long ago now that there was a quote by one of the managers or the higher ups, one of the owners or something like that from Ottawa, that said, "The rebuild is over." And since that season, they haven't made the playoffs still. They've got a lot of really good players, Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, the defenseman, I think his name is Chabot, bunch of these really good guys, but all together they just don't seem to be able to put it together. And I think that trend is going to continue, at least for this upcoming season. So I have Ottawa slated to go 6th in the Atlantic. even if they're a good team, there's so many other really strong teams in the Atlantic that's going to make it just so hard for them. I think they acquired Linus Ullmark over the offseason, which should put them at, in a very sort of good spot when it comes to their goaltending, but I just don't know if they have enough to take over those other top spots in that division. So that's why I have Ottawa slated to go number 6 in that division. Number 5, I have the Tampa Bay Lightning. So Tampa Bay has been a powerhouse for pretty much the past decade or so. And in my opinion, they are the closest team to being what could even be remotely considered a modern day franchise. So a little bit of history with Tampa is they won back-to-back Stanley Cups just a few years ago. And before that, they had made it to the finals, I think, another 2 or 3 times. So with that being said, like, there's not really any other team that's been considered like a franchise type, sort of like, dominator for the last few years. So if anything, Tampa had sort of gotten that spot when they had made the finals and then backed it up with some Stanley Cups as well. But I think the end of their reign is now. They lost their captain, Steven Stamkos, in free agency. They did not get him re-signed. They let him walk and sign with another team. And a lot of their other star players are starting to get up there in age. Like, I think Andrei Vasilevsky, their goalie, he's been extraordinary for the most of his career so far. But, I don't know if he still has the same sort of pedigree that he did when he was a little bit younger. Maybe he's not up to the same speed and the same sort of endurance that he might have been able to carry throughout the entire regular season. So that's why I think Tampa's going to slip. They're going to fall all the way down to 5th and finish behind number 4, which I have as the Detroit Red Wings. So Detroit, like Montreal, like Ottawa, like Buffalo, has been a non-playoff team the past few years. But I predict that this will be the year that Detroit finally finds themselves ahead of some of these other teams that they've been sort of fighting for a spot with. So they've been building and building and building the last few years. I think they got Steve Yzerman back in their franchise this time as a general manager. And what's really cool about that is that he was actually the guy who built that Tampa team that became so prolific the last few years. So with his guidance and his skill as a general manager, I think that Detroit can and will have a chance at overtaking some of these other teams and becoming a playoff team this year. So that's why I have them slotted as the number 4th Atlantic Division team, number 4. In the 3rd spot, so this is a divisional playoff spot, I have the Boston Bruins. So Boston obviously is another powerhouse team like Tampa. They don't have the Stanley Cups to back themselves up, but year after year, they have been in the conversation for being one of the toughest and most strongest teams in the NHL. They've won the President's Trophy, for the best regular season team. They've made the playoffs year after year after year after year. They've lost a lot of their talented guys over the years, though. Just a lot of them have been aging out and stuff like that. But they always have the system, they always have the coaching, and they always have the culture of winning in Boston. So I think that Boston will still finish in the playoffs, in the playoff divisional spot, number 3. But I don't think that they are as strong as they used to be. I don't think they'll be contending for the President's Trophy for much longer. So that's my number 3 pick. My number 2 would be the Toronto Maple Leafs. in that number 2 divisional spot. So the Toronto Maple Leafs, they have consistently been one of the top teams in the NHL for the past, I don't even know, half a decade at least. Just like Boston, just like Tampa, they seem to always find themselves in those top 3 divisional spots, yet they have no playoff success. So I will predict that this season, nothing much will change in terms of how they've been finishing, and I have them back in second place in the division and in that solid playoff spot, which means that number 1 overall for the Atlantic Division, I predict, will be last year's Stanley Cup champions, the Florida Panthers. So I think Florida is going to continue rolling with the success that they've had over the last few years. They were President's Trophy winner just a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. The year after that, they made the Stanley Cup Finals. And the year after that, they won the Stanley Cup. So this year, I think they will be tops in their division again. They're just so strong. There's just not another team in that division that really just leaps off the page like the Florida Panthers do. So that's my prediction for the Atlantic. I have Florida number 1 overall, Toronto second, Boston third, Detroit 4th, Tampa Bay 5th, Ottawa 6th, Montreal 7th, and Buffalo last place in the Atlantic. Moving on to the Metro. In the Metropolitan Division, I have number 8, Pittsburgh Penguins. That may come as a surprise because Pittsburgh has been such a good team over the last decade or so as well. You know, obviously they have Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, so many star players, and so many just really, really good veterans. But unfortunately, I think Pittsburgh is just, they're done. They're not in contention anymore. They're basically at the point in their franchise where they need to start turning over and having new players come in and start turning over the roster for the better. And Sidney Crosby just signed his most likely final contract to play with for the rest of his career with the team. And I think it's unfortunate because I don't think Sid is going to have a chance to win another Stanley Cup. So Pittsburgh and Sidney Crosby, 8th in that Metropolitan Division. 7th, I have their cross-state rival, the Philadelphia Flyers. Philadelphia has been a non-playoff team the last few years. They've had a little bit of, I don't know how to say this, maybe like an uptick in the last couple of years with John Tortorella, but they still don't seem like they're ready to take that next step. It almost looked like they might make the playoffs last year, but again, it didn't happen. So I'm putting them back in 7th. I think they're going to falter a little bit again. They've got some really intriguing prospects coming up, like Matvei Michkov, I think his name is, from the KHL. I heard some people saying and comparing and saying he might be, on the same level as a young player like Bedard over in Chicago. So that's pretty impressive for a young guy like that. 6th, I have Washington Capitals. That's another storied franchise. Alexander Ovechkin, probably one of the greatest goal scorers of all time. I predict that Washington will chase Gretzky's record with Ovi at the helm, but I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs. I think that whatever happened with them last year was a bit of a fluke because out of all the playoff teams last season, Washington, I think, had the worst goals for, goals against differential. So they had basically the games that they won seemed like they barely won, and the games that they lost, they kind of really got their you-know-what's handed to them. So I predict Washington will finish above Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, but I don't think they are going to finish much higher than that. Fifth place, I have the New York Islanders. New York Islanders, they're a really kind of intriguing team because it seems like the Islanders always have a chance at making the playoffs, yet they never seem like they're that scary, like they're that good of a team. They just seem like they're just kind of there. They don't really have a star player, like somebody that they can really just hang their hat on and say, wow, this guy is an absolute legend. You know, they've got some really strong players. They've got some really good goaltenders. They've got some decent forwards, but nobody that's just on that next level as somebody who they can say is like an actual all-star. So I think that New York is going to fall a little bit this year and finish fifth in division. And now here comes my off-the-wall, super hot take, very unpredictable fourth place finish for Columbus Blue Jackets. So this pick, most people are going to say is crazy. They're going to say it doesn't make much sense, but I just have a weird feeling. I have a weird gut feeling that I can't explain. I think Columbus is going to do well this year. I can't say that it has nothing to do with the extreme unfortunate and tragic accident that happened in the offseason to their star player and probably most valuable player, Johnny Gaudreau. He unfortunately lost his life in a bicycle automotive accident, and it was tragic. It was sad, but unfortunately, you know, I mean, sorry, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but just basically, I'm guessing that Columbus will rally around that unfortunate accident. They'll rally around his memory, and I just, for some reason, have a feeling that they might just use that really, really sad and tragic event as a way to catapult them into a position to play and say that, hey, we're doing this for Johnny. So I'm saying Columbus Blue Jackets are going to finish fourth in the Metro Division. That's a wild prediction. I get it, guys, but whatever. It's my thought. It's my opinion. If you don't like it, whatever. Do what you will. In third place, I have Carolina Hurricanes. They've been one of the strongest teams in the Metropolitan Division for the past decade or so. And they always seem like they have a chance to either win the division or be in those top three spots. I don't think much will change again this year. I'm saying they're back. They're back in third place again. I think they finished in third last year, and I think it'll happen again. So that's the Metro. Second place is New Jersey Devils. New Jersey had a super, super strong season 2 years ago. They were one of the top teams in the league out of nowhere because they had been a non-playoff team before, and they did really well. They finished, I can't remember where they finished in their division, but they ended up making the playoffs after not making it for a long time. But then they got knocked out in round one. Then last year, coming back after that really strong performance, a lot of people predicted New Jersey would be right back up there, right back at the top of the league, right at the top of the division. And then they fell back out. They ended up not making the playoffs last year. But they made some really key offseason moves. Most importantly, they acquired a good goaltender from Calgary, Jacob Markstrom. A lot of people are predicting that Markstrom will be the type of goaltender to provide that really solid backstop to get them back into the top of their division. And I think it will as well. So I'm going to say New Jersey finishes second, and that leaves the number one spot in the Metropolitan Division to be the New York Rangers. So the Rangers have been a top team for the past few years as well, and I don't think anything will change with them. They will finish first in their division, and they'll probably do it quite handedly, in my opinion.